Ethan once said he'd rather die than fall in love with someone like me. Funny thing, he looked half dead when he showed up at my door that night. Rain roared over the city, washing away the lies I'd been trying to live with. My resignation letter was still on my desk, neatly folded, waiting for tomorrow's dawn. I had finally made peace with it, leaving the hospital, leaving him, or so I thought. When the knock came, I almost ignored it. But there was something about the sound, urgent, uneven, trembling. I opened the door, and there he was, Dr. Ethan Cole, my attending physician, my mentor, my unrequited love. His white coat clung to him like a ghost, his lips pale, and his eyes, those damn eyes, were begging. "Liam," he said, voice hoarse, "don't go." I froze. Rain dripped from his hair, sliding down his jaw, tracing the line I used to dream of touching. My heart clenched. I wanted to slam the door. I wanted to hold him, but I'd spent 2 years in silence, pretending what I felt wasn't real, pretending that the way his hand lingered on my shoulder meant nothing, that the warmth in his gaze was just professional concern. And now he had the nerve, the absolute cruelty, to show up the night after announcing his engagement to someone else. I laughed, the sound sharp and brittle. "You're late, doctor. You already chose." His breath hitched, and for a second, I saw it, that flicker of pain, real and raw. But I didn't believe it. Not anymore. "Can I come in?" he asked, almost whispering. The storm behind him howled, as if daring me to shut him out. "Why?" I asked. "So you can explain how love works between engagement parties?" He flinched. "It's not like that." "Oh, isn't it?" I leaned on the doorway, the warmth of my apartment brushing against the cold air from outside. He was trembling now, his knuckles white where he clutched the edge of the doorframe. Then he said the words I never expected to hear. "She's not the one I'm marrying." My pulse stuttered. "What?" Ethan swallowed, eyes locked on mine. "It was arranged. For the board. For my father. For everyone but me." The rain was relentless, smearing everything into a blur: the street, the world, the reasons I had for hating him. "I didn't tell you," he continued, his voice breaking, "because I was scared you'd stop looking at me the way you do." Silence. That was when I realized my hands were shaking. Because I still loved him and I hated myself for it. It all began 2 years ago, in the emergency department of St. Clair Memorial Hospital, New York. I was a fresh nursing resident, too eager, too naive, and too stupidly in awe of Dr. Ethan Cole, the hospital's prodigy, the kind of man who walked into a room and made everyone stop breathing. He was everything I wasn't: composed, brilliant, and utterly unreachable. Rumor had it he turned down multiple offers from private hospitals just to stay in the ER. People called him a hero. To me, he was a storm in a lab coat. He wasn't kind, not at first. He pushed me harder than anyone, called me out when I made mistakes, glared whenever I hesitated. But sometimes, when he thought no one was looking, there was something gentler in his eyes, something I couldn't name. Late-night shifts blurred into months. Coffee breaks turned into shared silences. And once, after a grueling 36-hour emergency rotation, I found him asleep in the staff lounge, his head tilted against the wall, exhaustion softening his sharp features. I remember covering him with my jacket, stupid, small, intimate, and walking away before he could wake up. But he did wake up, and the next day he called me into his office. "Liam," he said, holding up my jacket, "you shouldn't care about people who don't need saving." That was his way of saying don't love me. So I tried not to. Until one night, we were the only two in the trauma bay, blood on our hands, hearts racing from adrenaline and grief. A patient had died, a teenage boy. I was shaking, barely holding it together. Ethan grabbed my wrists, pressed my hands against his chest, and whispered, "Breathe." And for a moment the world stopped. I could feel his heart. Steady, fierce, real. That was the night I realized love doesn't ask for permission. Back to the present. Ethan was still standing in the rain, lips trembling, his eyes silently pleading for something I couldn't give. "Not anymore. I thought I could protect you by keeping you away," he said. "But I hurt you instead." My throat tightened. "You think He took a shaky breath. I'm done hiding. I told them I won't go through with it. And what, you expect me to believe that? He stepped closer, his scent rain and antiseptic wrapping around me like memory. No, he said softly. I don't expect you to believe me. I just want you to know the truth before you walk away. I closed my eyes, the sound of rain pounding on the roof filling the silence between us. For 2 years, I'd been running after a man who only looked back when it was too late. And now he was finally here raw, unguarded, standing in the storm for me. Why now? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why tonight? He smiled, a sad, broken thing. Because tomorrow you'd be gone. He looked at me one last time before turning to leave, shoulders trembling from the cold. And that was when I realized sometimes love isn't about forgiveness. It's about understanding what you mean to someone even when you can't be with them. But as he stepped off my porch, I heard him murmur something so soft, I almost thought I imagined it. I love you, Liam. My breath caught, and before I could stop myself, I ran after him. I caught his wrist before he could step off the porch. Rain splattered our faces, and the world blurred around us. But his eyes, those gray eyes, stayed fixed on me. Say it again, I whispered. He blinked. What? That? I said, my voice shaking. What you just said. He swallowed, rain dripping from his chin. I love you. It hit like lightning. Sharp, blinding, irreversible. My breath broke in half. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. I'd waited so long to hear those words, dreamed them in every sleepless night. And now, when everything was already in ruins, he finally said them. You don't get to say that, I said, stepping back, trying to breathe. Not after everything. Ethan looked at me like a man watching the world crumble. Then tell me how to make it right. You can't. He hesitated. Then, like he'd run out of reasons to hold back, he reached for me, his hand trembling, finding mine. The warmth of his skin burned through the cold. I don't want to lose you, Liam. My name in his voice was a plea. And for a moment, I wanted to let him in, to forget everything, to just fall back into him. But love, I'd learned, isn't just about who you want to hold. It's about who you can trust to stay. So I pulled my hand away. You already did, I said quietly. The next morning, I submitted my resignation. I didn't see him again for 2 weeks. The hospital felt hollow without him, or maybe it was just me. Every corridor still smelled like him. Coffee, clean scrubs, rain. Every nurse still whispered about the engagement that might not happen. And every time someone mentioned his name, my chest twisted. Dr. Cole didn't show up to his usual rounds. Rumor had it he'd taken a leave of absence, personal reasons, they said. Whatever that meant. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was free. But freedom, it turns out, is just another word for loneliness. 2 weeks later, I found him again, not at the hospital, but at the diner across from it. He was sitting alone at the window booth, a cup of untouched coffee in front of him, staring out at the rain. His tie was loose, his hair a mess. I almost didn't recognize him. When he saw me, something flickered in his face, guilt, relief, maybe both. Liam, he said softly, you look different. Unemployed will do that to a person, I said flatly, sliding into the seat across from him before I could talk myself out of it. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You're angry. You think. The waitress came, refilled my coffee without asking. She looked at us like she could smell the tension, 2 men sitting too close, speaking too softly. Ethan sighed. I ended the engagement. I froze. Why? Because I couldn't keep pretending. He looked up, eyes searching mine. It was a deal my father arranged, to secure funding for the new surgical wing. I told myself it was just politics, but when I saw your resignation letter, you realized you couldn't have both. I cut in. Your career and me. He didn't deny it. You were right, I said quietly. You can't. Ethan leaned forward, his hands flat on the table. I don't care anymore. I'll leave the hospital if I have to. That made me laugh, a short, bitter sound. Don't make promises you'll regret, doctor. You were born for that place. His jaw tightened. I was born to save people, not destroy the one person who makes me feel human. My heart clenched. God, he always knew what to say. I stared at him, the rain outside blurring the city into streaks of gray and gold. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said finally. He nodded slowly. Then don't. Just let me try. And he did. For the next few weeks, Ethan kept showing up not with grand gestures, not with apologies, but quietly. He brought me lunch when I was too tired to cook, helped me pack my things from the hospital locker I'd left behind. Sometimes, we'd just sit on the rooftop of my apartment, sharing silence, the city lights stretching out like stars below. He didn't push, didn't ask for more. He just stayed. And somehow that was worse, because every time he smiled, I felt myself softening. Every time his hand brushed mine, I remembered what it felt like to belong somewhere. One night, as we watched the city rain from the fire escape, I asked, "Why me?" Ethan turned to me, eyes reflecting the amber glow of streetlights. "Because when I'm with you, I stop trying to be perfect. That shouldn't have made my chest ache the way it did." "You were always perfect," I said, trying to sound casual. He smiled faintly. "That's the problem." But life, as always, didn't wait for us to figure things out. The next morning, the hospital called. There'd been an accident on the highway, a massive pileup. Multiple casualties. They needed every hand they could get. Even former ones. Before I could hesitate, I was there again, back in the chaos. The smell of blood and antiseptic, the sound of lives slipping through fingers. Ethan was already there, barking orders, sleeves rolled up, fire in his eyes. For a second, I forgot everything else. We worked side by side for hours like we used to know words, just rhythm, trust, precision. When the last patient was stabilized, he turned to me, sweat and relief written all over his face. "I missed this," he said. I didn't say it, but so did I. That night, after the adrenaline faded, I found him in the staff lounge again, the same place where I'd once covered him with my jacket. This time, he was the one who covered me. "You should rest," he murmured, draping his coat over my shoulders. I looked up at him, half smiling. "You still treat me like one of your residents." He chuckled softly. "You'll always be more than that." Something in his tone made my heart stumble. When I stood up, we were too close enough to feel the warmth of his breath, to see the exhaustion and want written in every line of his face. "Ethan," I whispered, "don't." "Why not?" "Because if you kiss me, I won't be able to walk away again." He hesitated. Then, very softly, "Then don't." And before I could find a reason not to, he kissed me. It wasn't rushed, or desperate, or apologetic. It was quiet, deep, and utterly real, like something that had been waiting for years. The rain outside tapped softly against the window, as if the world was holding its breath for us. When we finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "Tell me to stop," he said, voice raw. I didn't. The next morning, everything felt fragile, too beautiful to be real. We made coffee together in my apartment, silent but content. He was still in his wrinkled shirt from the night before, hair tousled, smile small and shy. It was new and terrifying and warm in all the right ways. But love, as I'd learned, always comes with a catch. That afternoon, the hospital board suspended him. Conflict of interest, they said. Someone had leaked a photo, the two of us on the hospital rooftop, sitting too close under the city lights. It was ridiculous, cruel, but real. I found him sitting on the curb outside the hospital, staring at the suspension notice in his hands. His jaw was tight, his eyes unreadable. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. He looked up at me, a hollow laugh escaping him. "Don't be. They were always going to find a reason. You don't deserve this." He smiled, and it broke something in me. "Maybe I do, but if this is the price for loving you, I'll pay it." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But as I stood there, watching the man I loved lose everything because of me, a cold realization settled in. Love wasn't supposed to ruin lives. It was supposed to save them. They said scandal spreads faster than truth. By the time the board met again, the whole hospital already knew the brilliant Dr. Cole and his former nursing resident. The whispers were merciless, the kind that stuck to you long after people stopped talking. Ethan didn't flinch. He walked through the hospital halls with his head high, even as colleagues avoided his gaze. But I saw the exhaustion in him, the way his hands trembled slightly when he thought no one noticed. He had risked everything, his career, his reputation, for me, and I couldn't bear it. I should leave, I told him one night, as we sat in my apartment, the city lights spilling through the windows. He turned to me slowly. Don't. Ethan, you can still fix this. You can tell them I pressured you, that it was all my fault. Stop. His voice cracked like a whip. Then quieter. Don't you dare make me regret loving you. The silence that followed was heavy. He moved closer, brushing his fingers over mine. I'll fight for my license. I'll face whatever they throw at me. But don't take this away from me too. His hand was warm, steady. I wanted to believe we could survive this. I wanted to believe that love, no matter how impossible, could win. But the world doesn't change just because your heart does. A week later, the board made their decision. Dr. Ethan Cole was placed on indefinite suspension, pending review. His father, a member of the hospital's foundation board, publicly denounced his behavior, calling it unprofessional and inappropriate. The engagement, of course, was off for good. When Ethan told me, he was calm, too calm. It's done, he said. They made their choice. What about your father? He made his too. There was no bitterness in his tone, just resignation. The kind that comes after a lifetime of fighting to be perfect for everyone else. He walked away from the hospital that day, and I knew he wasn't just leaving his job. He was leaving the life he'd built around it, the expectations, the image, the armor. And for the first time since I'd met him, he looked free. We rented a small place in Brooklyn, near the river. It wasn't much, one bedroom, a leaky faucet, a view of old brick rooftops, but it was ours. The first few weeks were strange. Ethan would wake up at 5 a.m. out of habit, sit at the kitchen table, and stare at his idle stethoscope. I'd watch him from the doorway, wanting to reach out, but knowing this was something he had to fight on his own. One morning, he caught me looking. You think I miss it, don't you? He asked. I shrugged. You were born to heal people. He smiled faintly. Maybe, but right now, I think I need to learn how to heal myself. That was Ethan, the man who'd once treated me like a fragile thing, now learning to be vulnerable himself. We took long walks along the waterfront. He started volunteering at a free clinic in Queens. I picked up shifts at a local hospice. Slowly, the noise around us faded. The world stopped watching. And for a while, we were just happy. Not the kind of happiness that explodes, but the quiet kind, the kind that hums under your skin when you finally exhale after holding your breath for years. But peace, like love, never stays untested. It happened on a gray February morning. Ethan received a letter from the hospital board. They were reconsidering his suspension. He could return on one condition. He had to publicly disavow the relationship. I found him sitting at the kitchen counter, the letter open beside his untouched coffee. His expression was unreadable. They want you back, I said quietly. Yeah, but he didn't look at me. You already know. The silence stretched, sharp and suffocating. Ethan, don't, I'm not going to, he said, cutting me off. His voice was soft but steady. I won't erase what we have just to make them comfortable. I swallowed hard. This is your life, your career. He met my eyes then, and there was that fire again, the one I'd fallen for. You're my life, he said. Medicine is what I do. You're who I am. That broke me, because love like that, raw, defiant, unashamed, doesn't ask to be understood. It just is. The months that followed were hard. Money was tight, the clinic couldn't pay much, and there were nights when the world felt too small, too unfair. But Ethan never complained. He'd come home late, tired but smiling, smelling faintly of disinfectant and hope. I stitched up a kid today, he'd tell me, eyes bright. Fell off his skateboard. Reminded me why I started this. I'd smile, listening, feeling the quiet pride in his voice. He didn't need a hospital nameplate anymore to prove who he was. And maybe I didn't either. Spring came early that year. We were sitting on the rooftop of our building, watching the city blush under the sunrise. Ethan leaned back, one arm draped around me, his heartbeat steady beneath my cheek. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked softly. "Leaving?" "No." "Loving me?" He smiled. "Never." I wanted to believe him, but part of me still carried guilt for the storm I brought into his life, for the things he lost because of me. He must have seen it in my eyes because he said, "You know what I regret?" "What?" "That I didn't choose you sooner." The words melted into the morning air, simple and real. A year later, he got his license reinstated. Not through the hospital, but through a private medical board. He opened a small community clinic, Cole Health Center, right there in Brooklyn. The first day it opened, he asked me to hang the sign with him. As I stood beside him, the sunlight catching on his hair, the hum of life all around us, I realized something. We hadn't just survived the storm. We'd built something new from it. He turned to me, slipping his hand into mine. "You know," he said, "I used to think love was supposed to be clean, predictable, like surgery. And now," he smiled, eyes warm, "now I know it's more like an ER. Messy, chaotic, but worth every heartbeat." That night, as we closed the clinic for the first time, the city outside was alive, children laughing, lights flickering in the distance, a faint echo of rain on the pavement. Ethan locked the door, then leaned against it, looking at me like I was the only thing left in the world that made sense. "I never thanked you," he said. "For what?" "For staying when it would have been easier to run." I stepped closer, brushing a drop of rain from his jaw. "I didn't stay because it was easy. I stayed because it was you." He kissed me then, slow, steady, the kind of kiss that didn't demand anything, just promised. When we pulled apart, I whispered, "You know, for someone who used to hate love stories, you've become quite the cliché." He laughed softly, pressing his forehead against mine. "Only because you wrote the ending." Months later, during one of our morning shifts, a young resident walked into the clinic, nervous, eager, reminding me too much of my younger self. Ethan watched him for a moment, then said quietly, "He reminds me of you." I smiled. "Then be kinder to him than you were to me." Ethan chuckled. "No promises." But later that day, I saw him teaching the kid how to suture, patient and calm, his voice gentle, and I realized love had changed him, softened him, saved him. Maybe that's what we were meant to do for each other. Not fix what was broken, but grow around it. That night, the rain returned, soft this time, almost forgiving. We sat by the window watching it fall. Ethan reached for my hand. "You ever think about how it all started?" "Yeah," I said, smiling. "With you showing up at my door, drenched and dramatic." He laughed. "And you telling me to go to hell. I still might." He squeezed my hand. "Not tonight." And under the rhythm of rain and city lights, I realized sometimes love doesn't need a grand ending. Sometimes it's just two people who refuse to give up on each other. And for us, that was enough. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.